Welcome to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. I am delighted that you are here for today's conversation because we have a truly special guest joining us. My guest, Molly McCord. I'll tell you more about her in a minute, but I discovered Molly in 2014, 2015. I'm not really sure. It's been at least a decade, and it's so long that I don't really remember when. But Molly has a podcast, Intuitive Astrology. And her podcast drops twice a week on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I listen every week. It is one of the things that has been so consistent in my life and opened my eyes to a new tool that helps me understand myself better. And I'm going to tell you more about her in a minute. But for right now, let me introduce myself and my podcast partner and co-host. I am Laurel Boivin. I'm one of the co-hosts of Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life. I'm a leadership coach and a speaker. You'll find more information about me and the work that I do in the show notes. My podcast partner and dear friend, Laurel Holland. She is not with us today. She'll be back in a couple weeks for more good conversation. She's also a coach. She's a life coach and an author. You'll find information about her, the work she does, and the books that she has written in the show notes. You'll also find Molly McCord's information in the show notes. So let me tell you a little bit about her. Molly McCord is an intuitive astrologer. She's a best-selling author, a spiritual teacher, and a professional astrologer who has inspired thousands with her teachings on soul growth, consciousness, and astrology. Through her books, courses, and community, she has created such a beautiful space for people to deepen their self-awareness and align more fully with their soul's journey. Molly has a BA in political science and women's studies and a master's degree in international relations and diplomacy. And I know some people think astrology is woo, but Molly's background and her experience brings, I'm going to call it a mastery, a professionalism, which I find so incredible. For those of you who might be new to astrology, I want to just share with you some words that I have found from Molly, where she herself describes astrology. On a recent podcast episode, she calls astrology a beautiful navigational tool around the timings, cycles, and themes that are coming up for us. It's not a belief system, it's an energy system of consciousness, and it guides us with new ways of understanding what we're moving through. On her website, she expands on this description of astrology by saying, astrology is a language that opens you up to more of yourself and your energies in powerful ways. One of the most beautiful parts of this language is that you begin to love and accept yourself even more, beyond what you thought was possible. And that is the tie to Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life, because the work that I do, the work that Laurel does, and maybe the mission behind our podcast is self-awareness, so that each and every one of us can learn to love and accept ourselves even more. And with that, we're going to welcome Molly McCord. Hello, Molly. I'm so happy you're here with me today.
Thank you for having me, Laurel. I'm so delighted to connect with you. I know we're going to have a great conversation in today's show.
And I have told our listeners that I started listening to your podcast, Intuitive Astrology with Molly McCord, so long ago that I don't remember how long. 2014, maybe 2015, a long time ago. And I look at astrology as a tool that helps me either as a guide, it helps me as my brain tries to make sense of my experience in this world. I mean, astrology has become a big tool for me in my toolkit of keeping myself stable and sane. And that's why I want to introduce astrology as a tool to our listeners. So thank you for being here.
Oh, well, thank you, Laurel. And thank you for explaining it in that context because I absolutely agree. Astrology has been a tool for me for over 30 years. When I first found my first astrology book when I was as an early teenager, 12, 13, something like that in the library, and it sparked my curiosity, and the interest kept growing. The passion was there, the curiosity of what is all this, what does all this mean? It's so bizarre, right? It's this language, it's all these weird symbols, and then of course our minds are like, well, how does this even work? How can this be valid, and we question it. And I think that's so healthy, Laurel, because I've questioned astrology throughout my life. And I think that's just our humanness checking in, right?
Yes,
And then the more I learn about astrology, I see how it shows up and how it validates what I'm going through this language or through this energy system of consciousness. So astrology for me has demonstrated its validity over the course of, well, at least 3 decades now. But that's how I use it as a tool, is because it keeps proving to be accurate for my own experience. And it sounds like that's the case for you as well.
it is. And in a recent podcast, your podcast episode, I think it was the week of, let's see, did I even write it down in my notes? The weekly astrology, October 2nd
Yeah.
through the 9th. So you describe, and I made a note of this because it all of a sudden clicked with me when you used these words. That you said astrology is a beautiful navigational tool around the timings, cycles, and themes that are coming up for us. It's not a belief system, it's an energy system of consciousness, and it guides us with new ways of understanding what we're moving through. And when I heard that, Molly, I was like, oh my gosh, that that says it all.
Yeah. Oh,
And
good.
then
Oh, I'm glad that resonated.
it really did. And then, on your website, which I've spent a little time on, you expand on this definition of astrology, saying that it's a language that opens you up to more of yourself and your energies in powerful ways. One of the most beautiful parts of this language is that you begin to love and accept yourself even more, beyond what you thought was possible. Now, those words, I thought, this is about inner work, right?
Yes.
When I think about loving yourself and accepting yourself even more, and we need, especially in the world we live in today, we need all the tools and all the help we can get to learn to love ourselves. So to think that astrology, this kind of unknown, mystical woo thing, at least a lot of my community, the engineer science community that I
Sure.
live in, really
Sure.
do look at astrology as what is this thing? And
Yeah.
so I love that tie to that self awareness and self love.
And I find that with astrology, you do have to have a personal reading or a personal session with a professional who is going to interpret your astrology energy. And as soon as they start saying things that are accurate for you, that's when someone starts to connect to, there's something here. There's something that they're seeing in me, explaining in me, that I'm then understanding in myself that they wouldn't have known. And that's why this astrological language is about understanding more of who you are through the interpretation of what it all means. And it takes that personal verification and validation for people to get more curious and hook into it. And I will tell you too, Laurel, that even though I've been studying and practicing astrology for decades now, I never put it on people. Like I always honor, like if this isn't for you, totally cool. We can talk about so many other things, I think that some people feel like, oh, are they trying to sell me this stuff? And I'm not interested and I don't get it. And that's all someone's interest and free will. Like, if you're not interested, that's fine. But if you are a little bit interested and you're curious, I would recommend just starting with some of the basics and looking at, what is coming up in your own chart or in your own energy, because you might be really surprised at the accuracy and why astrology is such a beneficial tool for millions of people.
Yes. And we're gonna give listeners maybe some simple ways to get started in a little
Yeah.
bit later in our conversation. And so here you are, a young, I'll say adolescent at some age,
Yep.
where you discover astrology and and you have curiosity that keeps you in this discovery for decades.
Yeah.
So tell me about when did you, or was there a time where you were on that path of curiosity and you knew this work that you do now was something that you were being called in to do?
Oh, yeah. So that's a great question, because I feel that most astrologers feel like I didn't choose astrology, astrology chose me, because I never thought this would be what I'm doing. I never thought this would be my profession or my path. I have a master's degree in international relations and diplomacy. I've done a lot of school, a lot of education. I did a lot with, corporate America and sales and marketing, and very much on that path. And then a lot started shutting down for me that brought me into more of this passion. And astrology was always something I referenced when I was going through big life changes. When I was looking at, well, what's ahead? What's coming up next year? What are the potential themes? What should I be aware of? And so I found it to be that tool, right? And then it just kept going further into more things that I studied. And I took various classes. I studied with various mentors. I had one-on-one sessions with astrologers with more experience, where I could ask them questions and understand more about, how they did this work. Because a part of me was at first really intimidated. Like, you're giving people life advice, and that's a really big deal. And you have to honor the complexities of life. You have to honor the fact that, people go through a lot of hardships and they need assistance. They come to an astrologer looking for the reasons, looking for their options, looking for the timing. When is this going to be over? When is this going to start? So I always approached it as something with a lot of responsibility. And it wasn't until one of my mentors told me that I could do this that I actually probably had my real true fear. Like, oh, really? I could do this? But then I started to take it seriously. And what would that be? What would that look like? I had sessions with people. That was good for me to develop my skills, and because you're many things as an astrologer. You are not only the astrologer, maybe you're a teacher, maybe you're a counselor, maybe you're a healer, maybe you're a guide. You're giving a lot of information to help people on their path. So it just basically started to grow from there. And I incorporated it into my website at one point, of course, and then had more sessions with more people, did my podcast. So it all kind of slowly grew over time. But I look back and I'm like, wow, like, what a gift that this passion turned into a profession. And I'm so grateful that this is what I get to do every day.
Did you experience resistance as you moved from, maybe that corporate place of having a particular job, title, role, and then came into astrology? Like, did you,
Oh,
and what did that look like? And how did you get through that?
I had to wrestle my shadows. I had to wrestle my fears. I'm business minded. And so I'm like, well, how do I set this up as a business? As a form of service that helps people, but you got to pay the mortgage. So it was looking into what would be the right type of business platform to build this astrology work. I had fears in 2019 about going bigger, and I was afraid of being seen or doing more out there. I never wanted to be on camera, but that's now the norm, right? So I had to face my own fears that were, of course, my own limitations holding me back. In 2019, I was at that precipice of what direction do I choose? It was a fork in the road moment. And I was really considering becoming a professor of political science at a university here in Florida. I was looking at what credentials do I need? What do I have to prepare? What would my lesson plans look like? I was really on that track. And I had to call myself out and say, Molly, you're doing this because you're afraid. You're afraid of doing more astrology. You're afraid of going bigger with this. I was afraid of even doing more on my YouTube channel. So I had to understand what I was really battling, that it wasn't about finding another job. It was where I had to, tap into my own self confidence that I can do this. I can do this. I know I can do this. And it was interesting because even if I were to go be a professor, that's standing in front of the room teaching about something. And I realized, do I want to be talking about poli-sci or do I want to be talking about astrology? I was like, I would rather be a professor of astrology than of poli-sci. So I had to have some very real conversations with myself, Laurel, because I think anytime, that we're choosing ourselves, we're going to be choosing our fears, and we're going to be choosing to work with those fears and however they show up. So yeah, I've definitely had the resistance that I've had to face. But I think that just, of course, brings us more clarity.
Yeah. And were there practices, um, maybe astrology was one of them, but what tools, what practices did you have to get through, to grow through those fears?
I have energy work that I like to do. I will do EFT tapping to work with any emotions or anything that's moving through me that I want to transmute. I will do a lot of either journaling or even discussions with, a trusted friend. I always consider that a really good tool for anything that's going on. I'll look at even past life work or things that might be relevant to what's coming up now. And if it's related to other things that might be connected in my lifetimes. I look at, what is coming up that I need to just have a mental shift around and just reprogram it or think of it in a new way. So I'll kind of access a variety of things. I don't just have one tool, but I like to have that smorgasbord of things to just work with and call in as needed.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same.
Yeah.
I've been journaling since 1977, and
Amazing. Do you still have your journals?
I do. I
Oh, fantastic.
when I moved last summer, there were 4 boxes of journals that moved with me,
All
which
those
is
different versions of Laurel, right? Like each
absolutely,
one, each
absolutely.
one.
And there's some hard times in there, and there's some great times in there. And as a coach, I often, ask my clients and my community to journal,
Yeah.
because it is a powerful tool. But the EFT tapping, I think Laurel and I years ago did an episode that included some tapping. It's a great way to move energy.
Yes.
And time in nature for me is another tool. I know when I have
Yes.
inner work to do, when I have clarity that needs to come through, being in the woods for me is where it comes. And so having this, variety of tools to
Yeah.
go to when you need them is incredible. And I do think, our brains are constantly trying to make sense of our experience. We're
Mm.
trying to sort through it cognitively when sometimes, it takes the energy release out of your body or opening some heart space. And I think opening up to the universe and what the universe is bringing for you
Yes.
to be able to make sense of it all.
Yes.
So one of the things I was thinking about is how do you weave, the astrology and these other tools that you use into the full life that you have. You have a business, and before you tell me this, I can only imagine or assume that your growth in your business as an astrologer since 2019 is huge.
Hmm.
And so how do you bring it all in? And
Yeah, great question. I do have my routines of things that I'll do like certain days of the week. I'm grateful to have support, people who work with me and for me to help with various things. But I also, what I have to do, Laurel, is let myself off the hook and step away, to open up my energy, to not be too overly focused, because I can be hyper focused. Like I will hyper fixate on something that needs to get done, and I will work on it to get it through and get it to that finish line. And then I need a break. Um, I honor my own inconsistencies. So that means that I don't always work on deadlines. Part of being a self-employed entrepreneur is I get to choose some things, I get to choose what works for me. So I can honor when, oh, I don't want to do this right now. I don't have focus for this, or it's not a priority anymore. So I get to pick and choose where my energy goes. So I work with my energy all the time. And so some weeks I can be really productive and other weeks can be slower and calmer. And it's exactly what I need. So that's something that works for me, is that I'm able to work with my own energy and work with the cycles that are happening. And of course, work with the astrology. So for example, whenever there's Mercury retrograde, which maybe your listeners have heard about because it's more popular these days, Mercury retrograde is when we're advised to slow down, double check details, make sure we haven't missed anything, keep our expectations open. Mercury retrograde is when we can have more errors, more cancellations, more things that fall through the cracks. And so whenever there's a Mercury retrograde, I also adjust my business and my life to accommodate, okay, this is going to be probably a time of maybe catching up on things instead of initiating new projects. This is a time to like slow down and not try to push so hard or get a lot done. So I work with the energies of astrology all the time. And I actually find that to be really supportive. How
So
about you?
I do the same, and
Yeah,
it's not just the astrology, but I really the moon cycle and following the increasing moonlight or
yeah,
energy and the
yeah.
decreasing, and trying to give myself permission to let my own energy,
Mm,
cycle with the moon.
beautiful.
And also, in the astrology, I've been really, really interested in the outer planets, and you'll have to correct me if this is not right, but is it Pluto that has an 86-year rotation around the sun?
Oh, that's Uranus. Has
Okay,
80.
yes, okay.
Uranus has 84.
84.
Pluto has 250.
Oh, well, I'm not that slow, but
Yeah.
but right, understanding kind of that each planet has its own cycle or cycles and timing, allows me to think, well, what if as a human I could really honor my own cycle and timing? And it's just such a way to, a new way to think about things for me.
Oh, yeah.
Because in the high productivity, high achiever, high productivity life that I live in, I want
Yes.
to cross everything off my list, right away.
Yeah.
So I love this practice. And I want you to be, before we go deeper into some of this, I want you to give our listeners, everybody has heard about Mercury retrograde and the slowdown that happens or the things that go wrong during Mercury retrograde. But is there a planetary cycle or a planet that is this time of initiation and birthing things? What can our listeners know or start to listen for as a time to initiate things?
So every new moon, once a month, is a
Okay.
great time of initiation when the sun and the moon are conjunct or together in the sky. It's when the sky is the darkest. And so you can look up at the sky and realize, okay, it's time to be in this place of new potentials, to seed new possibilities. Every new moon is that initiation period of the month. So that would be a good cycle to work with, to understand that this is a time of being intentional around what I'm beginning.
Mhm. It's a good one.
Yeah.
If I think about someone that is brand new, exploring or even just starting their curiosity about astrology, where
Yeah.
should they start?
So, in terms of resources, I would start at a website like astro.com. You create a free account and you're going to need 3 data points. You're going to need your birth date, your birth time, and your birth location. Exact birth time is important. You put that in to their software and they're going to create a chart for you, and it's going to look really weird and be confusing. And you're like, I don't know what this is. But you're going to go to where it says free horoscopes and just start reading the basics of your chart. And it will say if your sun is in Virgo in the 11th house, what that means. If your moon is in Cancer in the 8th house, what that means. So you don't have to know the language, but this is a great website to start learning how it's all interpreted. And this is where you may be surprised at, wow, that is true for me about my gifts and my self-identity and what I want to do in the world. So I would start with just these free resources, read up on what it says, because this particular website, astro.com, is written by professional astrologers. That's why I recommend it. And it gives you really good information, and it's free. There's a lot that's free. So it's a no risk investment. But that would be a great way to just start and to see, what it says, and to think it through and understand how it may resonate.
That is the website I used for my birth chart.
Is it?
And
Yeah.
and it's amazing. I spent many, many years searching for my time of birth
Mhm.
because in New Hampshire, there was a 7-year window in the 60s where they didn't put your time of birth on your birth certificate. I
Yeah.
happened to be in that window.
Mhm.
So when I started to get serious about my birth chart and wanted to know more, I searched everywhere, and it was about a 2-year process
Wow.
that I didn't find it. And then
Mhm.
it was only a couple years ago that when I was cleaning, and some of my listeners know this story of my basement. My former house, we had a 2,500 square foot ranch with a 2,400 square foot basement. And
Wow.
yes, it was a lot of stuff keeping me in the energy of stagnation and being stuck.
Yeah.
But as I was cleaning the basement one day, I came across my baby book with my birth time in my baby book.
Wow.
And I thought, isn't that just such a lesson? I'm searching external for something that I had with me all the time.
Amazing. Amazing. Wow. So you're one of the lucky ones who is able to find that information, because many people can't. In fact, people will come, to my website and ask, like, well, how do I find my birth time? I was adopted, or they didn't record it when I was born, or my mom doesn't know. And so I do have a video on YouTube that talks about 7 ways to find your birth time, just in case people need any guidance with that. But
That's
I love that
wonderful.
you found it. I love
Yeah.
that you found it, Laurel, because
Yeah.
there it was.
And when, the curiosity takes you down this path
Mhm.
of learning and wanting the resource of more information about myself and who I am at the core. My
Yeah.
birth chart was one of the things I really wanted for a better self understanding.
Yeah.
And so it was an important piece of information for me. And so for me, it was just this beautiful thing of learning about myself as I was searching for information about myself.
Yes.
And,
Beautiful.
and, and
Yeah.
so when I think about, astrology and how, in your experience, have you seen it deepen this self-awareness or connection with ourself and
Mm.
others?
Oh, beautiful. Yes. Well, that would go back to your own astrology chart and looking at more specifics around how the planets interact. So at the time of your birth, think of it as there's a snapshot in the heavens of the energies. And that's what is then put into a birth chart. That's what you're looking at, is where the planets are and what conversations are happening between the planets. And we call those aspects. And the aspects give us insight into how our energy naturally works, or where it feels challenged, where we're good at something, where we have preferences. Also parts of ourselves that maybe we have more challenges or more things we don't want to look at. And so the birth chart gives a snapshot of that energy. And as you go into the specifics of your own chart, you understand, oh, this is why, for example, I didn't enjoy this kind of activity when I was younger. Like, let's say you were more of an athlete and less of someone who, I don't know, want to do chess. like it explains your preferences and what you enjoy. And it starts to help you connect the dots around who you are. Then you can also understand some of your own unconscious behaviors and patterns. So, for example, your Mercury sign is how you communicate, think, process information. It's how you're going to perceive the world. It's what you are interested in reading, things you want to watch and pursue. So your Mercury is going to resemble your mental patterns and where your mind feels satisfied. And if that Mercury, for example, is squared, we call it a square, by another planet, a square is a challenge. And a square ultimately leads us to growth, but we have to recognize the square. So if it's squared by, let's say, Saturn in astrology is all about doing hard work. It's about focusing in on what's realistic, what can you handle, what do you want to master and improve. If Mercury is squared by Saturn, you might feel you have to study harder to do well in school. You could be unconsciously tough on yourself. You could have a deep inner critic who's always kind of pushing back and challenging you to do more, do better. So these types of aspects show us more about our inner workings and can again validate your own experience and put it into a new context that maybe you didn't realize before. So that's how I feel the astrology chart, Laurel, really helps with our inner work, because you start to identify things. And I also see it as the astrology chart is a starting point, because once you identify some of these tougher aspects, then you can work with them more consciously. Then you're aware of, okay, my inner critic is pushing back here, telling me I can't do this, telling me I'm not good at this. I recognize it for what it is. So let me change that thought pattern. Let me look at how I can approach this in a new way so I'm not so hard on myself. So it pinpoints where inner work is possible and shows you that there are other ways to approach it.
Can you give our listeners maybe a personal example of something that you had to make peace with, that, in your lived experience, that was there in your birth chart all along, right?
Yeah. And okay, so based on what you've shared about your audience, I was never good at math. I am not good at science. And I struggled with that in high school. And I had to get a tutor at one point for some of the higher level algebra. Like, I just couldn't get it. It just took me longer. It just wasn't my thing. And so now my son is in 5th grade, and I'm surprised at the math that's taught in 5th grade these days. Like, to me, it seems like I think I learned this in junior high. It's like the math that they're being taught is happening at a faster pace and seems to be more challenging. So he brings home his math homework, and I'm like, oh, I am not the person for this. I'm not good at this math. And that's in my chart. That's in my chart. So then we're seeking out the resources to go through it. And it's interesting because I realize, like, this is a gift that I get to revisit this part of myself that I always felt was not so good at math. And now I get to do it with my son. And then we're both doing it together. And it's in his chart to be good at math, which he is, but it's in my chart that I'm not. So that was validating for me. I felt like I got some understanding there that explained, why I didn't have certain mental strengths that other people have.
Well, and I do think that it gives us the opportunity to be less critical of
Yes,
ourselves, right?
yes.
To be able to, I use this term a lot, make peace with, right? Whether it's maybe, something that I'm not gifted in, or
Yeah.
it's a shadow side. Those are the things that I tend to think, oh, I could be, should be better
Yeah.
at things. And so when you start to understand maybe some of your, I don't know if disposition is the right word, but some of your ways of being that
Mm.
your birth chart has clear as characteristics, traits, experience of your
Yeah.
soul based on when the time that you were born, it starts to make sense. And I can give myself more grace by knowing some of the things in my birth chart.
Exactly. And I have been a type A most of my life. That's just how I am. Eldest daughter, always the leader, always doing things, always involved, always just wanting to do my best. And so math was humbling for me, if you will, and it actually helped me go into more self-acceptance and just be aware that you don't have to be good at everything, and that has no reflection on your self-worth or your personal abilities or even your life path, or anything further down the line. It's sort of like it let me accept, okay, this is something that I'm just not good at, and that's okay. And
Yeah.
I feel very matter of fact about it. And that's something that the astrology can bring forth, is like to just accept certain things about yourself.
Yeah. I want to talk for a minute about the community that you've created through astrology,
Yeah.
because, as a listener of your podcast and a
Yeah.
follower of your work, I sense that you have an enormous community of people that are interested in astrology, interested in your teachings, and
Mm.
using the tool to better themselves and the world that we live in. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit and tell our listeners about the community that you've created.
I'm blown away because it's so many wonderful, intelligent, creative people who are drawn to astrology that assists them in their world on their life path. And I've met many through my retreats and in-person events and workshops. And everyone just comes together, and it's like this gravitational pull to share astrology and what they're learning and what they've come to understand about themselves. And everyone kind of has this, they're the student and the teacher, they have something to offer and something to receive. I find that a lot of my listeners and community are very aware of energy and energetics. They could have felt very sensitive throughout their life, very intuitive, psychic, very aware of other dimensions and other things going on in their world, maybe felt like the black sheep, or the outcast in other situations. And it's because they're ahead of other people in terms of what they're here to master and bring back into the world. They're here to understand energetics. They're here to trust their intuition. They're often here to do something on their own, and they want to feel supported and to know that the universe is supporting them. My audience is interesting, Laurel. At one event, I had a 19-year-old and an 82-year-old.
Wow.
So there's a huge span of people interested in astrology, all over the world. And I'm just amazed by all the wonderful people in the world, who I've met, but also who know that this is what benefits them, validates them, supports them, reinforces their connection with the universe.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a beautiful group of people.
And do you see, or maybe you can share with us, what do you see when someone begins to see their life through the lens of cycles and soul growth, right?
Yeah.
Tell, in your experience, what do you witness in there?
I think it starts to bring together life experiences that have formed you or shaped you, validated your natural gifts that usually were set aside or forgotten, sometime in childhood or adolescence when the world told you there wasn't a place for this, or we don't value this, or you can't make money doing this. I think people start to feel a stronger sense of purpose in what they're good at and what they're here to do, professionally and personally. I think they start to feel a strong rising self-confidence in who they are and who they came to be in this lifetime. Their astrology chart will show them where they're here to shine and be recognized, where they're here to connect with others and offer themselves in some capacity. I think that a lot of people feel that astrology validates them at a very core level, and it opens up more of their connection to the universe as well. So I
Mhm.
think it's something quite, it's quite sacred and personal. And then at the same time, it's collective, because it's like, yes, I feel that too. It's something that a lot of people say.
And having that community, and it's a global community,
Mm.
really does, the validation is so important. When you think about, I, in my coaching practice, I call it our God-given gifts and talents that we
Yeah,
might hide or we might put away or choose not to, like intentionally choose not to use them
right.
because we've been told they're not of value. You're not going to be paid for them. Whatever it is that we're led to believe. I mean, I do coach a lot about that, and I think this is a beautiful way for people to really say, "Oh, this isn't just something I like or is in my comfort zone. This is who I am at my soul level,"
Yeah,
which is beautiful.
yeah.
And I can only imagine in your growth as an astrologer from, the early child who is curious to the business you've built now, I can only imagine that you had to overcome some of what you were led to believe or told about what you couldn't do. Moving
Mm.
from maybe the college professor to the astrologer, right? I
Mhm.
mean, I can only imagine what that looked like for you.
I, I don't know that let's see. I don't, I'm not sure how to answer that actually, because I never thought I couldn't do it. Like, I guess I should say, I'm getting tripped up on this question because I was afraid of being seen, but I knew I could handle my skills. Like, I know I can be teaching, offering, because those are my strengths. Like, I know my strengths in my chart and I know who I am. I know that, but it was putting it out there that was hard for me. It was like going bigger and being seen. But it was still that point of, how do I do this in a way that can help as many people? And that is something that I had to move past. And that's where I go into the intuitive astrology of I just trust what comes through as I'm doing my podcast and doing this work, because that's all I can do as a messenger is just trust what comes through and hope that it lands, knowing that we're all connected to the universe, that we all, have access to the energies of this time. So I feel like I'm the messenger, the translator, and I want that to be useful for people. So that's where I would have doubt, I guess, Laurel, is like,
Yeah.
is this resonating? Does this land? Is this sounding ridiculous? Because there have been many times that I thought that. But that's something I had to trust in. So I guess that's my long-winded
Yes,
answer.
I love that. But this is so important because learning to trust your intuition,
Yeah.
learning to trust, you know, whether you see yourself as a messenger and you have messages coming through you for the world, or whether you see yourself as simply someone who has internal wisdom and knowledge, right?
Mm.
It's hard to trust what comes through and share that with the world. So, any
Mm-hmm.
suggestions for those of us who suffer from that?
Yes. I mean, I think that's normal, especially, if you're just getting started on on that path of trusting it. I think that things come to us for a reason. I think it comes through for reasons we don't always know in the moment. But that it only comes through because it will be accurate or resonate at some level. That's what I've learned, is that we don't have to understand it personally, but there's a reason why it's coming through at this time for reasons that are yet to be seen. I think it's something that you continue to trust, and you have to choose to trust it because it is a choice. And it's something too that you build the muscle around it as you go. So similar to, lifting weights, over time, the muscle gets stronger. The same with your intuition. Over
Yeah.
time, you have the muscle memory. Like, you just know this is what I need to say, or this is what I need to express. So I do think it's a muscle that has to be active. I also think it's something that we have shut down, especially back in school or back in our younger years when it wasn't validated or acknowledged. And so that can be part of what you're wrestling with, is, putting yourself out there, or saying something without it being validated by anyone else.
Yes. So we talked a lot about, in an individual using their own birth chart to understand kind of their cycles and way of being. But let's talk for a few minutes about astrology more on a collective or global level,
Yeah.
because the world we live in right now, here it is, 2025, end of 2025, the world is off its rocker.
It's only going to get worse. It's only going to increase.
But
It's only going to continue. Yep, it is.
before we get into that, where it's
Yeah.
going, I want you to give our listeners a little bit of help them understand how astrology might give us insight into the collective or global happenings.
Mm. Yes. So one thing we do with astrology is look at the cycles of and the interactions between the various planets, of what they're saying to each other, if they are on the same page, if they are in conflict. And we look at the themes that come up, which, by the way, are all the themes that have been tracked and recorded across centuries. So we're using these themes based on centuries of observation and understanding of what's previously unfolded in similar cycles. So that's what we're drawing from, as we're looking at, okay, the last time Neptune was in Aries was actually when the American Civil War started. And so we understand that, okay, what are the themes from back then that are presenting themselves now? Well, you might notice that America is very divided right now, and that's probably not going to change anytime soon. But what do we do with that? What do we learn from that? So there's things that we pull on historically through these demonstrated, events and timelines, and then we apply them to our current situations and circumstances, and that helps us see, okay, well, what's to come? What are the possibilities? What's the likelihood here of certain things developing and increasing? So we use basically tracking of the planets, mostly what we call the outer planets, the ones that are furthest away from us, to help determine some of the global themes, potentials, and what we're moving through collectively that's affecting all of us.
It's so incredible. And,
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking about your podcast. Um, your Monday is
Yeah.
the more, I'll say, collective or global astrology. And then the Wednesday is kind of what's happening in that week coming up. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Correct. Yes.
And
Yeah.
so having the combination of both of those kind of outlooks is always very interesting to me. And so
Mm.
when you were kind of coming into this place, you started podcasting in 2012?
Correct. Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
I know.
Um, how has your business and your podcast evolved over the years? And did you have any inkling based on your own astrology of where it was going to go?
Yeah, so I started in 2012 with a script and being, very meticulous in my notes and what to say and not wanting to miss anything. And at some point I threw all that out the window, and that I don't use notes anymore. I just go with, whatever comes through or whatever is happening at this time. So I started out, wanting it to be very, just look a certain way and make sure that I was saying all the right things. I also only started with a Wednesday podcast. It wasn't until later, I think 2017 or 2018, I added in the Monday podcast. I did take at least a year off when my son was born, and to be a mom, I was a full-time mom. I used to do the podcast during his nap time because he took a reliable 3-hour nap every day. So I felt like I hit gold.
Wow.
So I was able to do my podcast even while being a full-time mom. But it's evolved to be something that can cover more topics because more people are interested in astrology. So they come looking for more things that pertain to their personal lives, as well as more things going on in the world. I remember that I know a lot of astrologers were talking about the world changes that would happen starting in 2020. And so in late, I think it was December 2018, I did a podcast talking about the world is going to be changing in 2020, changing
Molly,
beyond what we've known,
I
changing
remember that.
beyond what we could do. I even did like your 2020 toolkit. And so this is how astrology is so useful, because it gives you a heads up that these changes are coming. And I understand that we don't believe them till we see them, but it gives us an understanding of, again, those themes and cycles that are coming through. One that's coming up that I think we're overdue for is an economic crash or a big change in our financial systems. Of course, that's not news I want to be saying. That's not something I want to happen, but that's what the astrology suggests, that, we're overdue for that type of big global economic change. So that's something that astrologers are looking at and talking about, and certainly could be the case over the next 6 months or so even. So the astrological suggestion would be to be more conservative, to save your money, to be aware of, what you're investing in, what you own. That's all part of the big themes at the end of 2025 into 2026.
It is so fascinating because I remember those days when you were talking about the world changing in 2020. And I have this memory of kind of this period of 2020 to 2024 and then 2025 being even bigger. But just these, as a listener, I tend to listen and contemplate,
Yes.
what all of this means to me as a woman in New Hampshire in a small community, and what it means as that community, grows into the global community. And I do know in coaching, really, and in my own life, I look at often it takes systems and structures
Yeah.
to collapse in order for something new to come, right? That
Yes.
whenever we are in a place of growth and birth and rebirth, we really do need to make space for it. And so it's this thing of how to listen, how to be aware of the astrology without letting the fear take
Yep.
over. Any
Yep.
suggestion there on how not to
Well,
let astrology scare the heck out of you?
yes, that's important. It's as simple as, forewarned is forearmed. And to know that we get the heads up to help us make more choices now, better choices now, to plan or to just think about the probabilities and possibilities. So what would I do if this were to happen? What would I do if, there was going to be a big hit to the housing market? I mean, at a more mundane level, we're already dealing with the rising costs of groceries, right? And everything in the store is more expensive. So we're looking at, okay, how do I use money? And what does that mean to me and my values in my life right now? So it helps us to check in on how are you living your life? What are you choosing right now? And be aware of what choices to make. Should something, change. We talk about rising gas prices a lot, right? That's something that comes through every now and then throughout a year. We're, looking at how um, astrologically Pluto is in Aquarius. So one thing I'm looking at, Laurel, is how airports are going to be changing. Air travel is going to be changing over the next 10, 15 years. That's something that I have my eye on astrologically. So when I go to the airport and I'm aware of all the systems at an airport, right? Like checking in, luggage, getting through security, everything around even getting the food orders to the planes, like all of this is one huge system composed of multiple systems at an airport. And that's going to be shifting and changing over the next 15, 20 years. So those are the kinds of things that I think it helps us to have a heads up about them and understand that everything's meant to evolve and everything's meant to change, but so are we. We are also meant to be adaptable and to stay open to new choices and new options. And I think that's one thing that astrology reminds us of, is how to make empowered choices, working with what you have and knowing that you will know the best next step for you when it's needed.
Yes, and especially when you think, you have this information, this wisdom coming from the astrology, and
Mm,
when you learn to trust your intuition and tap into your own values, understand your own values, it's the combination of all of those pieces, all of the
yeah,
tools, whether they're internal or external, and we use them. You know, I'd like to think that everyone has the ability to use them
right.
for the betterment of ourselves and others. Um, and I love when you said, probabilities and possibilities, because I
Mm,
do think often we're in the fear of, you know, knowing knowing certain things that maybe are you could expect them to happen based on your astrology, right?
mhm.
You're anticipating, you're forecasting what is possible. It's the fear comes, I think, when we get too stuck in the probability and not the
Mm,
possibility,
yeah,
right? Knowing that, every new thing comes because, a former thing no longer exists,
right. Yes,
so
yes.
we're going to wrap up soon, but I want you to be able to tell our listeners where to find you, how to travel with you.
Mm,
The I don't remember the name of the cruise, but you have done two astrology cruises.
yeah, yeah.
And so I think for our listeners, they may be curious how to learn more, how to be with you more, and all that you offer.
Well, thank you. I do a lot right now of online workshops because that allows more people to participate and show up. So I've been focused on those lately. I hope to have some more in-person events in 2026. Those will be on my website, mollymccord.online, under events, any kind of in-person things, speaking engagements, all that good stuff. But I do, of course, my podcast every Monday and Wednesday. And I do have a variety of ways for people to learn about their astrology chart that's very easy to understand. And I just want to share the two books. I've written 12 books, but the two on astrology, this one is called Soul Growth Astrology, and it's very beginner, meaning it's very easy to understand. And you would just start with your sun sign. So if your sun is in Capricorn, then you would read about the sun in Capricorn and some things that you're learning about yourself, some ways that you're working with your energy. This one it's called a workbook, but it just has like journal prompts as a way to think about your energy and yourself in a new way. So this one is just meant to be, more interactive as well as self-reflective. And then if you want to learn even more about your chart, you went to, let's say, astro.com and you understood more about your planets and their placements. This is a book called Awakening Astrology that talks about your 5 personal planets and what they mean. So if your sun is in Libra, it discusses that. Then we go into your moon sign, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. and what each of those means. So this one takes you a little bit deeper into your chart just to get into more of who you are and who you came here to be. I think too, Laurel, you were talking about, how people have passions and they realize there's something they enjoy, but they can't make money doing it. I
Yes.
think we all have that, right? Well, that would be related to your Venus sign. Your Venus sign is what brings you joy, what lights you up, what makes you happy. So you would
I'm
look up your Venus sign. Yeah.
I'm taking a note. I'm writing this
Yeah.
down right now.
Yeah, because your Venus sign is what makes life better for you, where you feel happy and self-confident. In fact, I often recommend to people, if you've had a hard day, go to your Venus sign. Your Venus sign is going to raise your energy, make you feel better, give you some pleasure around what you can do right now, today, to lift your energy. So those are just a few books that I hope give people some value, as well as easy to understand in entering the world of astrology.
So amazing. And I was feeling there's another question out here for me. It's a question for you, but it's coming through. And
Yeah,
that when you think about your own, your soul growth, your inner work journey,
yeah.
what, how did it change after you became more intimate, more steeped in astrology?
I think it brings up more self-loving practices, more understanding of, this is who I am, this is what I like. It cuts out the excess, it cuts out the shoulds. It helps you understand, what is a better choice or what is going to feel good. I think that astrology, because it's so self-validating, it can just feel like you're getting a hug from the universe.
I love that.
Yeah, and just help you enjoy yourself and your life more. I mean, isn't that what we want? Like the name of your show, right? It is about the beautiful life. It is about what we can do to create and experience that more regularly. And I think astrology is just a great tool for that, Laurel.
Yeah. And that
Yeah.
just reminds me, I never asked you the question about how you would describe your beautiful life. And then we're going to end on that one.
Oh, okay. Well, I would say that, that definition has changed and evolved through multiple life phases, because of course, being a new mom, there's new things about a beautiful life when you have a beautiful baby boy. And then there's things about my life that I find really beautiful now, that give me pause, that give me gratitude and appreciation. That I get to spend quality time with my son, that I get to, connect with so many people discussing astrology, my passion. I feel like a beautiful life is created, day to day, but also month by month and year by year. So it's always something I want to check in with and just say, like, is this true for me right now? Is this an energy, or is this an experience I'm having that contributes to having a good journey here? I think that there's a lot of things we can't control, but how we create a beautiful life is something we can control.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I love how
Mm-hmm.
the words that you used to really bring that. Um, because it really is our choices, our values, and what
Mm-hmm.
resonates with us
Yeah,
in this time,
yeah,
um, without holding on tight to the things that no longer serve us.
right. Beautifully said, Laurel.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And we will have link to your website in the show notes so that our listeners, if they want to, reach out with their curiosity, they know where to find you.
Great.
So thank
Well,
you.
thank
It's a
you.
pleasure. And I can't believe after all these years, I get to be face to face with you. I mean,
Oh,
what
well,
an honor
thank
and a
you.
pleasure.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for connecting. Thank you for having me on your lovely show. And congratulations to you and all the years you've been doing this and all the shows you've done. I'm sure so many people look forward to listening to you every time they can. So thank you for having me, Laurel. It's been
You're
lovely
welcome.
to connect.
You're welcome. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us. We will be back next week for more Beautiful Work, Beautiful Life.